All right, it's been a couple weeks, or at least a week, since I did my CJI review. I told you guys that I was also going to do an ADCC review, so that's what I'm doing today. This will come out this Friday. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but of course I competed in ADCC, but this is not about me. It's going to have nothing to do with me. This is all as me as a fan who was watching the sport and me as a fan going back to watch the sport. So I have a couple notes on a little whiteboard right here, and I'll talk about some of that stuff and talk about the others. But before we go, I want to say a lot of people were trashing on ADCC, saying the matches weren't as good. I watched all of CJI, and I would say about half of those matches were snooze fest. ADCC, likewise. I think it's just kind of the nature of Jiu-Jitsu, regardless of the rule set. There's gonna be a lot of snooze fest. But with that said, let's take the negativity out. This is not a negative necessarily video. We're gonna talk about the best matches, the 3 best matches, in my opinion, just to start out with this ADCC review video. And there are 3 matches that I think you should watch. Number 1, in my opinion, easily the best match of the tournament was J-Rod versus Giancarlo. Jay just was a freak. He just kept moving. He passed Giancarlo a couple times in no point period. But of course, Giancarlo did the, let's say, like the veteran thing and just kind of held Jay off and then secured points and won the match. I believe 4-0, 6-0, something like that. But the score doesn't really reflect how the match was going. Jay kind of gassed himself out, but it was a fun match, and who cares if J-Rod wins, right? It's just awesome to see him compete because he is undoubtedly one of the most exciting competitors, whether it was ADCC or CJI. Next was Dorian Oliveras versus Garibeg. This was a first round matchup. Garibeg is a Russian guy. I don't know what part. I don't know if he's Ossetian, Dagestani, Chechen. I don't really know. It's the one thing that sucks about these Russian guys. You have no idea what part of Russia they claim. I have no idea. I'm sure a little Google search would go well, but regardless, he was a little wrestler or sambo guy. Dorian, obviously a high schooler, 17 years old, I believe. Really good, top 10 in the country, American folk style wrestler. Also ADCC Trials champion. This match was fireworks from start to finish. Garibeg ended up winning the match with like a last minute back take, I believe, from a takedown. It was just a beauty of a match. The dudes were just firing on all cylinders. It was, in my opinion, the second match that's a must watch. And lastly was Pixley versus Marigali. Of course, I'm a bit biased in this one. It sucks that Marigali got hurt, but if you actually watch the whole match, Pixley threw Marigali once before the injury throw, almost past Marigali's guard with a flying knee cut, and he snapped him down into like that 3/4 with the front headlock. I mean, he was being the dominator in the match. It was really fun, especially, it was just fun to watch. I have nothing against Marigali personally. It was just a really big match. I was personally excited to see. Just rolling with Pixley, you probably don't, if you haven't, you probably don't understand how tight his front headlock is. And it was just cool to see him perform. All right, so now we're gonna actually get back to the event. I wish I would have done that for my CJI video, but hey, maybe I'll talk about that later. But now we're gonna talk about just the pros and the cons of ADCC not as a competitor. Once again, as a viewer. As a competitor, I'm super grateful that I was able to go to ADCC. I was super grateful that I was paid to go to ADCC, and I'm super grateful that I got the invite, even though there were plenty of other guys. I only placed 3rd at ADCC trials. Anyways, now the pros and cons as a viewer, Brandon Reed, the viewer, because I'm not just one thing, right? The pro, for me, it's gonna sound crazy, but there were multiple ADCC champions from the previous ADCC who won their divisions again. Most notably, Giancarlo, Kynan, and Baby Shark. I thought it was super awesome to see those guys repeat their success, specifically because I think with Giancarlo and Baby Shark, it was more of maybe they got lucky those years, or they just barely squeaked by. Obviously Giancarlo got a submission against Lucas Barbosa in his last one, but people were still doubting Giancarlo because he's kind of off and on, especially with these out of season competitions that he does. I mean, then with Baby Shark, he kind of won everything by a ref's decision last time. This time he submitted I think he got 2 or 3 out of 4 submissions, and then Kynan just did what Kynan always does, 3rd ADCC in a row. It was super cool. I think consistency is fun to see. It's there's dynasties, there's a Gordon Ryan, there's the dynasty of him just winning all the time since 2017. But it's nice to see these guys that kind of get pooped on quite a bit. When you talk about the ADCC champions, be successful, again, facing still really good competition. Of course, there were guys that are out, not at 66, but at a -99 and -88 who are out in CJI. To be completely honest, I don't see any of those guys giving that much of a threat to Kynan or to Giancarlo any more than the guys that they faced at ADCC. Of course, the obvious exception is Tai Ruotolo at -88. I think Tai would definitely have been the guy to beat Giancarlo, but he wasn't in the division, so it is what it is. And even then, I really doubt that would happen. He's a bit smaller. He's actually a lot smaller than Giancarlo, and Giancarlo is really good, although he doesn't have the name that Ty does to us, to the viewers. But that's just the reality of how good he actually is. The second really big pro is lots of new guys were able to just kind of show out, you know. And by new guys, I mean guys who didn't win trials, but ended up coming to ADCC doing really well. Notably Ryan Aiken, who took out, I think, the 2 seed, Pedro Mourinho with the heel hook. Ryan Aiken didn't even place at trials, ends up submitting a trials champion and IBJJF world and absolute champion. Chris Wojcik, he submitted Josh Hinger. He beat a couple really tough guys, and he ended up getting 4th place. I mean, again, another guy who didn't win trials, just got invited and just showed out. So I'd say, like, if you think about the guys who just got invited after the whole CJI debacle, I'll call them CJI ADCC invites. Those two just showed out. So Ryan Aiken and Chris Wojcik, those two are my like standout newbies or standout CJI consequential invites. It would have to be those two guys. It just goes to show how deep jiu-jitsu is. Like, it's crazy because we put people on such a pedestal for like winning trials, but man, it's like it's really anybody's day. I guess J-Rod technically was an invite, but he got invited before the whole CGI thing. Now we're gonna talk about the cons. Actually, I'll talk about a couple more things. So I personally didn't know what to expect when I was there at ADCC. From what I heard, because I didn't go to the last ADCC, production was a lot less this year than it was the previous year. I felt like some things were underwhelming for me, specifically like the walkout and stuff. But I also think it's just a perspective of me as an athlete being down there. It's like my mindset when I'm doing those things, like like none of it was like, I wasn't hyped. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean it wasn't awesome. It was awesome. I just think that the mindset that I was in was, okay, I know I'm about to have pinna. I know we're about to do this face off. Like, I'm ready. I'm in like kill mode. So it was just like, okay, let's get in kill mode and let's do this. So what I expected was a lot more of how I would personally feel, but it wasn't. It was fine. Other than that, I thought it was just awesome. I thought the finals were super dope. It was super fun to watch the finals live. Cons, the same thing I said about CGI. The days were too long. As a fan, it was like, man, I felt like if you include the absolute division, day 2, it felt, man, it was 7-8 hours of just sitting down watching jiu-jitsu, which it was fun, but the issue was that, like, I don't know, it's like you're just gonna get tired. you get tired. It was almost too good, right? It's like if you're at a fast food buffet and there's a bunch of ice cream or there's the chocolate fountain and you're like, ooh, I can have as much chocolate as I want. I'm gonna absorb, I'm gonna go eat all this chocolate, and then you're sick at the end. That's kind of how I felt at the end of watching ADCC. Likewise, like I said about CJI, I felt very similar about CJI towards the end. It was a long day. It was hard to watch. It kind of reminded me of like when I was in college and we would have like just any normal wrestling tournament where you'd weigh in and start wrestling around 9, and then you wouldn't even be done until 7 or 8. If it was like an actual big tournament where there was like, for me, because I was in NAI, like the Moval Invite Conference or Nationals, like those are the 3 big ones. It was just long. I don't really know that there is a solution. I think that it was also extremely hard to watch all the matches. So there was like Mika Gaval versus Elder Cruz going on, but then also Dante Leon versus Mike Perez, like, and then these guys over here, and then these guys over here, and it was super tough. But again, that's the great thing, that if you have flow, and I know someone's gonna be like, oh, flow's not free. Well, yeah, okay, I get it, whatever. I don't really know what to tell you there. But if you do have flow, you can go back and watch all the great matches, and they're pretty easy to find if you have it. Another big standout, and I didn't write it on my little whiteboard, was Adele Fornarino, I believe that's her name, the Australian chick. It was super cool to see that there was an absolute division. It was also crazier that she was the first champion at, I believe, -55, and then she also went on to win the absolute against some big girls. I think all submissions, yeah, because she submitted Brianna, she submitted her second girl, and then she submitted the last woman with like almost that like Orlando Sanchez like key lock type thing. It was pretty cool. The big thing that stood out to me, and it's one thing that I thought CJI maybe did have right, that it was like when there were those matches that were so razor close and there were a couple really bad calls, I found. I think the most notable one was Mika and PJ Barch's match. If you go and rewatch that, man, you could have said PJ Barch was in mount, but PJ Barch was putting all the action out there. You know, in my opinion, PJ Barch won that match, and it's really hard to say. I get it. I understand initiations. I've done so many ADCC rule set matches at this point. I understand initiations. I understand everything, but it's like, man, it was a little weird seeing PJ win. It was similar to Wagner and Elijah Dorsey. That was another one where I thought, okay, the edge should have went to Elijah Dorsey. But again, there seemed to be like a, I don't want to say a fan favor, but there seemed to be something where they were pushing certain guys to go forward into the tournaments, I mean, and I thought it kind of sucked. But you know, whatever, like someone, I'm sure one of the great refs could explain to me why like each other guy got the decision. It's just me as like an athlete who's competed in it. It's really hard to tell why PJ didn't beat Mika or why Elijah didn't beat Wagner, and I have nothing against Wagner or Mika. It's just the truth. It's just how I feel. Other than that, like a couple bad, I wouldn't call them bad calls, but a couple calls that can make a fella think. And being a long day, I thought ADCC was great. As much as people hate on the Felipe Gordon match and the Gordon Yuri match, I think there's a lot to learn if you're a student of Jiu-Jitsu. I understand that like Gordon's like, I would call it pressure, passing, cooking, camping style of game isn't exactly the funnest to watch, but you can't win all the matches with flying knee cuts and cartwheels. I mean, look at me, right? I think it's interesting to watch how Gordon passes, but it was also interesting to see that I think maybe some guys are catching on to that, how that's how he's gonna pass, and like he's not really able to gas these guys out like I kind of thought he would. Like with Yuri, he didn't gas Yuri out. I think that was 40 minutes. But regardless, I loved ADCC. It was amazing. I hope you guys watch more of it. My camera died, so I'm gonna finish up the video with my phone. But yeah, like I said, the Gordon matches could seem really boring to some people. In my opinion, wasn't that boring. I think there was a lot to learn. Of course, it was slow. At the end of the day, I loved ADCC. Overall, as an experience, I'd give it a 8.5 out of 10. The matches were great. It was fun to watch the athletes compete. It was fun to compete. And I don't think that it's necessarily important to try to continue to compare CJI and ADCC. CJI has cemented itself as its own thing. ADCC has cemented itself as its own thing. And there's value and merit to both completely. And if you're an athlete who's competing in either one of them, you're one of the best athletes in the world, no matter what some random person says. They're both amazing. And as much as people love to hate on ADCC has given a lot of people a lot of opportunities. I'm about to go into a Canadian seminar tour where I just got 14 seminars to teach takedowns for Jiu-Jitsu, because why? I hit one double leg on Felipe Pena, and now all these doors are opened. So real world, people actually care about this stuff. Like they care about ADCC, they care about CJI, and I guess that's the final message I wanted to leave on that. Now I'd like to ask you guys, what did you love about ADCC? What did you hate about ADCC? If there was one thing that you could absolutely change about ADCC, what would it be? Other than that, guys, talk to you next time.